So as you can see, I've got a little bit of a high spot in this deck, and the reason why it's showing up is that the deck was designed to be able to pull out in sections. I'm Brian Davis, Home Improved Man, and I'm going to show you how to find the high spot and how to be able to remove it. And I should also point out here that this is not something that you would normally do with a deck. When the deck is attached to the framing, small variations in the height of the deck will not be noticeable to the human eye, and of course they're not going to move because it's all attached. It's only in this particular situation of them resting on the framing that it's going to be as noticeable as it is. But the reason why this is useful is because, or the reason why I'm making this video is because it does apply to other situations where you have a high spot or a low spot that you need to address. The one thing that you're going to need is some chalk powder. So, let's take a look at how we're going to do this. Now, by walking on it, I'm going to figure out, by moving to either sides of the high spot, I should be able to find where it's rocking. So I've got one of the 2x8s running right here, and when I walk on either side of that 2x8, that's where I'm getting the rocking motion. And so what that tells me is that this is the high point. Now the two ways I could address it is either by building up the either side of it, but I really like the way that the ends line up with the rest of the deck, so instead I'm going to knock down the high spot. So it's this beam. I'm going to take some of this chalk powder and keeping it light, don't want to put any pressure on it because I want to see where it's hitting. And then I'm going to place the section of decking back on it, moving carefully so I don't smear the chalk around, because I really want to get a clean idea of where the contact points are. And then we go through the rocking motion again. Now I already know that it's that beam that's creating the problems, but what I want to find out here is that the entire beam, how much do I need to sand down? So then we take this section out. Now, what I'm going to show you is the beam and then the back of the deck. If you look here, you'll see a bit of pressure there, there. It's all on one side. So it seems like this side's going to be the high spot. Now, if we look in here, and hopefully it shows up, you can see where the blue has connected to the deck. Now we don't have it down on the bottom, so it's mostly middle to top end. But I'm going to sand the entire deck. So I did have a moment of wondering if I was having any effect here, so I had to go back and check earlier in the video to see what it looked like when I first was rocking across the high spot and then how it's looking now. And it's worth doing that once in a while so that you know if you're on the right track to solving the problem. And it has improved, so I keep going. Now what you see is that there's more movement up at the top than there is down at the bottom, so I'm going to start spending less time down there and more time up near the top. Minimal movement. Minimal movement. It's really on these last two boards, so I'll say the last 10 inches up near the front edge. Oh dear. We're going to shift our video into tool safety. This is why you must keep track of your wires when you're using a power tool. Now, those wires are live. The reason why there's no power is because of the switch right here. So you have electricity running through the wire into this unit. This would be very bad to touch. If it had been touching anything metal inside of the sander, it would have had sparks, possibly flame, possibly fire. That's unfortunate. I'm going to have to go and address this. First thing I do is unplug it. Alright, after a little detour in repairing the wire on our sander, and for the video on how to do that, look at the previous video, or the next video, depending on when I put it into the rotation, and we'll get back to the sanding. Having learned to keep track of our wires. That's a lot better. There's still a small amount of movement, and that could be due to simple warping. I don't want to sand it down too low. I've got a little bit of a high spot right here at the end that I'm going to work down, but otherwise I'm pretty happy with the result. Now it's worth noting here that I'm using a really rough sandpaper, a high textured sandpaper, because this wood that I'm sanding will never be seen, and I want it to sand it quickly rather than to make it pretty. If I were trying to make it pretty, I would then move on to a higher grit, and a higher grit which has less texture and ends up with a smoother surface near the end. Yeah, that movement is almost imperceptible. And I think that as the deck settles, it'll come into better alignment. I hope you found this video helpful. Feel free to like the video, subscribe, and share it. Say hello to Robert. Hey, Robert. Say hi.